let's get this show on the road. My name is Anna Myers. I work at Grow Capitus. My business partner is Neal Bawa. We buy apartment buildings all over the United States, as well as other forms of commercial real estate. But more than that, we're also all about education. And we like to help people develop knowledge so that they can buy their own commercial real estate and so that they can also know what they're doing. We have a data-driven approach. We feel like we have our brand is differentiated by the data science that we bring to the field. My business partner, Neal Bawa, is a very well-known man in the industry as being an innovator, just an out-of-the-box thinker. He is known as the mad scientist of multifamily by his friends, and he lives up to his name. We are always experimenting and all about the science of real estate to the benefit of our investors who can rely on us to do an extreme level of due diligence, not only when we're acquiring a property, but when we're asset managing a property. We bring our data science to that as well, to always make sure that we're being the most efficient with the way we're running a property. So that's who I am. And by the way, I'm the lead underwriter for the group. And I always work with great lenders. And John-Brickson is one of those lenders. John and I have known each other and been corresponding for what, maybe about 9 months, John?
Yeah, at least 9 months, I would say.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on the phone, talking about markets, talking about deals. And I've always really appreciated how giving John was of his time and his knowledge. So we formed a great relationship, a great business relationship along those lines. And we are really happy to have him here on our webinar. Before I turn it over to John, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. We will be sending the replay of the webinar as well as the presentation in PDF format out to everybody who is attending, as well as everybody who signed up. So don't worry, you're going to get the slide as PDF as well as a replay so you can listen to this all over again. The other thing I want to tell you is that you are welcome to type questions as we go, either into the chat or into the Q&A. If it is an appropriate moment for me to interrupt John to ask your question, I will do that. However, I want to say that most of your questions are probably going to be held to the end of the presentation, just so that he can get his flow going. But I will be trying to answer all of the questions that we are able to answer in the time that we have. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to my friend, John-Brickson.
All right. Thank you, Anna. And thank you to Neal and the rest of the Multifamily U team for having me on. My name is John-Brickson, and I'm a national multifamily lender with Old Capital Lending. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. And on this webinar, I'm going to be discussing some of the most common financing sources for multifamily properties. Sorry about that. Good thing that happened early. Putting my phone on mute. On this webinar, I'm going to be discussing some of the most common multifamily financing or financing sources for multifamily properties. And I'm going to go into greater detail about Freddie Mac's small balance loan program, which I believe is one of the best financing sources in the market. And I especially think that's true for newer or first-time multifamily investors. So as Anna mentioned, please type your questions into the chat box and we can get to those questions towards the end of the presentation. So just getting started here with the agenda. So first, I'll provide an overview of banks, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac, and also provide a comparison on each one of those lending sources and how each is different. I'll also provide a brief overview on bridge loans. After touching on some of those different loan types for multifamily, I'm going to do a deeper dive on the Freddie Mac small balance loan program, which I believe, like I said in my opener, that it's one of the better loan programs available in the market, but especially for newer or inexperienced multifamily investors. Once we review the Freddie small balance program in more detail, I'll review a couple of different case studies of recent Freddie small balance loans that I've closed, and I'll wrap up the overview or the presentation with an overview of my group, Old Capital Lending, and discuss how we can get in touch and help you with financing your next multifamily investment. And then, as Anna had mentioned, we'll end the presentation with next steps and some Q&A. So some background on myself. So I'm a nationwide lender. I joined Old Capital in February of 2018, and to date, I've closed loans in, of course, the Dallas-Fort Worth market, Houston, Seattle, Kansas City, Florida, Minnesota, Virginia, and currently closing loans in South Dakota, Kansas City, and of course, a couple of other loans in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. I was born and raised in Kansas City, but I've been based in DFW since 2014. I have a BA in economics from DePaul University in Indiana, and I have 7 years of experience in commercial real estate financing and investing. Over the course of my career, I've been involved with the origination and underwriting of over $1 billion in commercial real estate loans across all property types, but I now focus on B and C multifamily, which I believe to be the best property type and the best niche to focus on.
The current market cycle, correct?
Well, current market cycle and just overall and over time. I mean, multifamily has outperformed self-storage, office, retail, industrial throughout multiple cycles, and has really been kind of a tried and true asset class or property type where downside has been limited and upside has still been significant.
Very true.
So it's a great property type to focus on. So getting started with our presentation here. So there's a number of different loan sources for multifamily, and like Anna and I were just talking about, like equity investors, lenders have recognized that multifamily is the best property type out there. And, given the attractiveness of multifamily, there's a lot of different financing sources available for multifamily. But for now, I'm just going to provide a high-level overview of the three most common sources of financing for multifamily, which are banks, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac. So we'll cover the minimum loan size on each, talk about recourse versus non-recourse, and which lenders can provide non-recourse options, the typical loan term, so how long of a loan term will each lender provide, amortization, max LTV or maximum leverage you can get with which each source of financing, property occupancy, and what kind of occupancy certain lenders look for. We'll talk about the rehab budget. So lenders will finance part of your purchase price. Some of them will provide you with funds for the rehab if you're budgeted any rehab. Some of them will not provide funds for rehab, so we'll touch on that. We'll talk about prepayment penalties, and then also borrower experience and what lenders are looking for in terms of borrower experience. So first, touching on the minimum loan amount. So there's really no minimum loan size for banks, but the minimum loan size for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac is $1 million. And so you can go down to $750,000 with Fannie and Freddie in certain situations, but overall, the rule of thumb that I always stick to with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in terms of minimum loan size, I would say is $1 million. So that being said, banks are often the best source of financing for smaller properties. So, the 8-unit property that's being acquired for $500,000 is too small for Fannie or Freddie, but it's too large for a conventional residential mortgage, as anything 5 units and above is considered commercial. So that being said, your main option for financing for a property of that size is going to be banks. And to me, one of the biggest positives of multifamily investing, and one of the reasons why I think it's one of the best property types, is that you have some of the best loan terms available for commercial real estate with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Fannie and Freddie, they don't finance self-storage, office, industrial, or retail. They only finance commercial apartment buildings, so 5 units and above, at least under their multifamily program. Obviously, Fannie and Freddie do loans for single-family properties as well, but they only finance commercial apartment buildings and their minimum loan size is generally $1 million. And so I always encourage investors to target properties that have a purchase price of at least 1.5 million, or properties that could eventually be worth 1.5 million upon stabilization. As at 1.5 million, that's a property that has a large enough value that could support a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan.
John, we have a question that we, just to clear it as we look through all of these things. You're talking about commercial real estate being 5 units and above. What about a portfolio of single family homes? So somebody looking for a single loan, there's a seller that wants to dump their entire single family portfolio. Would that qualify?
They do not. So Freddie Mac did have a program for portfolios of single family homes. And it was a pilot program that they tested out in 2017, maybe first half of 2018. And they've recently decided to pull out of that market. So they don't have a single family portfolio program. There are non-recourse lenders out there that will finance single family portfolios, but those are private lenders, and the rates are not as competitive as the rates that you would get with a Fannie or Freddie loan on a multifamily property.
Great, thanks.